Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana M.A. and
Jackie Sanders. We're two art professionals sharing forth the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journey.
We talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday.
So on today's episode, we want to talk about a topic that's near and dear for most of us. And we've all been there. You feel like you have what is an impossible goal. You're wondering how to get from where you are now. And essentially, you're trying to make a living from your artwork. I mean, that's really end goal, and don't even know if it's even possible.
Right. And especially no matter what phase of the creative process you're in your career, with social media and with just marketing in general, it can often be super easy to look at someone else's career and it feels like they're an overnight success, right? It may seem like they have all these things going on, all these amazing projects, and that you may have a checklist a million miles long that you need to do before you even start selling your artwork. But that isn't necessarily the case. So let's go ahead and dive in for what you need to be a successful artist and sell your work.
Yeah. So we'll start with what you don't need to start selling your art. Because unlike other things, like I'll just use a quick example. Let's say food. You may want to know how to cook a cake before you try to sell a cake, right? Otherwise, it might be absolutely inedible and disgusting. So art, on the other hand, the good thing is there's so many billions of people on this planet. Chances are, whether it's your grandma or your neighbor or a coworker, whatever you make, there is no art police that will stop you from selling things, and also they're not ingesting it. So chances are, you can sell it. So that's what we want to kind of dive in and demystify some of it. So let's start with what you don't need. And the first thing, and this is a question we get a lot, is you don't need an art degree, people. You don't need an art degree. Think how many musicians are famous and like best bands out there in the world. They didn't even necessarily go to college, much less music school, right? Like there's a lot more involved in it, but a degree is not going to give you the thing. It's not going to give you the element. I was like looking this up the other day. Da Vinci, one of the most celebrated artists in history. He had no formal education besides basic reading, writing, and math. We're talking basic, right? Um, he did apprentice with other artists, however, which could in a way equate to taking in-depth art workshops. So it wasn't now we're going to take humanities and basic science and all these things and get a 4-year degree or whatever. And there were like other educational institutions at the time, but he didn't get any of that. And it's like, we're still talking about this guy hundreds of years later. So it's like, you definitely don't need an art degree.
Yeah, he was clearly doing something right. Especially as speaking as someone who was fortunate enough to get a degree in art, I loved my experience. However, it 100% is not a requirement for becoming an artist, especially where we have our studios at Art Space. We meet so many different types of artists with all different backgrounds, and it really shows how many resources are available to artists these days if you are proactive and intentional about seeking them out. So everything, especially if you have very minimal budget for investing into your artwork, which we have a whole other episode on that, on things that you could be beneficial to invest in. But things like YouTube tutorials, if you're working on fine tuning a specific art making skill, whether it's oil painting, whether it's sculpture, working with the new material, there's YouTube, an entire video database that's out there where artists are showing their techniques. And again, I think that's a huge benefit with being in the arts, is that it's very different than, okay, I want to be an engineer. You have to get certain certifications. There's very systematic ways in which you need to learn how to do things in your industry. As an artist, there's no one perfect best way to do anything. There's, okay, 90% of people may highly suggest doing it this way, but artists are encouraged to break the rules. You got to know the rules to break the rules. But having YouTube mentors, virtual mentors through podcasts, taking online or in-person workshops as your funding it becomes available, as maybe once a quarter, once a year, investing in an in-person workshop. And also within your own community, being able to find a quote unquote art education through your friendships and relationships with other artists. It may be like, okay, I know about acrylic painting techniques and styles, and I have all the tools. You come over to my studio and you can like play with all these, and I'll show you what I know, but I know nothing about sculpture. So if you work in plaster, I would love to hear about your process and how you do that. So trading skills with other artists, because you all have different backgrounds, whether from high school education or workshops you've taken, and just embracing that community over competition mindset rather than the formal curriculum itinerary of an art degree, because it can be very much of a big financial investment that isn't always available to everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and, some of the artists we've talked to on the podcast have actually taken on, the equivalent of apprentices, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, you might be trading with an artist where you might say, "I'll clean your brushes, like, I'll be your assistant, I'll help you with social media. Can you help me how to, use a palette knife with oil and cold wax?" For example. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be an equal trade. It can be like different things that you kind of help each other out with.
Yeah, you could say,
Definitely don't
okay, I'll
discount
offer
that.
my services of making a digital spreadsheet of all your art inventory and helping put
Mhm.
hanging hardware on your
Yeah,
painting. All those things that doesn't necessarily have to come from the artist's hand. And in exchange, I'll do that for 5 hours a week. And can you mentor me for 1 hour on painting technique?
exactly,
Like
exactly.
it's a mutually beneficial thing.
Yeah, and then there's scholarships and grants too that can help you out, so always keep an eyeball out for those. So there's different ways to fund it, and of course, we obviously know a lot of artists that we interview on the podcast too that also have side jobs, and that's how they pay for it. So essentially, what we want to kind of share with you is like we're giving you the permission slip if you need it. There is no art police out there to get you if you don't have the right education. That's all very subjective, anyways, but there's different ways to fund it. It doesn't have to be formal education. There's a lot of other ways that you can, put and customize your education too. So,
Exactly. The only permission that you need is from yourself, essentially, and not holding yourself back, as cliche as it sounds. But another thing that you don't need to have an art career and start selling your work is representation from a gallery, a consultant, or having an art agent that sells your work for you. Because, of course, it does take work to learn how to sell effectively, but it really is possible to sell your artwork on your own directly to your intended audience, especially in the day of having websites that are pretty user friendly to set up, having social media where you can share videos and pictures of in progress pieces behind the scenes of your studio and build that relationship with your audience without having the middleman of a gallery or an agent. It really puts all of the power in the artist's hands, which I find is, yes, it's another thing that we have to kind of add to our tool belt, but it can be a super empowering feeling, know that you still have a voice with your audience.
yeah. And, when you think about it, it takes time, anyways, for you to find, assuming you've already found your style. Let's go with that first, right? That's something
Good
like,
clarification.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even with artists like of all different levels, whether again you went formal education or not, you still have to find your voice, right? But let's assume you did. It is going to take you some time to find the right business partner to help sell your artwork. And many of them will prefer to, for you to show them that you've been selling consistently and have some kind of direction regarding the audience that you're selling to. And that's also going to help you with finding and like attracting the right kind of galleries and selling partners. So say for example that you do realistic marsh landscapes and watercolor. I don't know, that's like super specific, out of the air. I caught that one. um there's going to be some galleries that are, for example, colorful, vibrant abstracts only. Well, you're not going to try to go to them, right? Because your audience, your intended audience, and theirs are going to be different. They already have a niche. You already have a niche. They're not necessarily compatible. So
Mhm.
you're then gonna be looking for those kind of galleries that have that type of work. Also, not all galleries carry watercolor. So if that makes sense, once you kind of pick what lane or lanes. By the way, you can be in several lanes, but once you kind of narrow down the field of all the different things you want to do and kind of narrow down your focus a little bit and start selling on your own and kind of learning what you like, what you don't like. This is also how a lot of people like find out that they would rather not sell themselves and would rather have somebody else handle it. And that's perfectly fine. But at that point, you've already gone through it so that when you do identify a selling partner, consultant, agent, etc., you are actually a little bit better equipped to know how to, in a way, like, I don't want to say protect yourself. That sounds a little rough, but
Mhm.
essentially how to leverage what you're bringing to the table versus what they're bringing to the table, and to be able to say, okay, look, if I'm going to split this half and half with you, what happens if I'm shipping stuff to you? Do we split that in half, or am I only the only one paying the shipping? Or how do we handle if somebody sees the work outside of your gallery space and they want to buy it directly from me? Like, those are the kind of things that you're not necessarily going to know how to handle until you've already been selling at least a little bit and get a feel for that. And then that way it'll help you identify your partners better. I mean, they want you to know at least some of it. So yeah, it takes
Exactly, and I
time.
think knowing that information and having those skills up front also make you more almost like desired by a gallery because you've already put in the time up front to figure out who is the audience. So they know it's a you know and they know if it's a good fit for them and their audience, which kind of
Mhm.
goes to that larger idea of not every institution of selling artwork is meant for every artist
Mm-mm.
and making sure that it is the right fit for the gallery. And to your point too, I loved what you mentioned, Adriana, of learning how to do the skills yourself so that you may learn, I don't want to be doing this on my own. And I think that's a lot of the time you understand, okay, well, by having a gallery represent me, you understand the value that they bring because you understand how long it takes to cold email collectors. You understand how long it takes to photograph your work and list it on the website and post it on social media and all of these things that go on behind the scenes that when done correctly no one really thinks twice about it because it's just done like of course they're going to list my artwork on their website, of course they're going to post about it on social media twice a week. But then when you're the artist really doing that behind the scenes you're like, wait a minute, I started this at 10 a.m. this morning and now it's dinner time. Like, where did my day go? Like, you see the value of what they bring to the table, but also to your point, you understand when maybe the ball may be dropped. And I think that's just power to having the skills in your tool belt to understand what's the best use of my time for where I am right now in my career. But
Yeah.
to start off, I think it's definitely not necessary or really advised to have gallery representation right away.
No, no, you definitely don't. Another thing you don't need to sell your art is you don't have to be at the peak of your mastery. You don't have to have X number of years doing your work before you can even have someone consider buying your work. Like, I'm pretty sure my grandma traded me like $5 worth of candy back in the day for one of my Crayola drawings when I was about 7 or so. Like, let me tell you, it was pretty terrible. But that's the thing, and that's kind of some that ties into something we mentioned earlier. Like, regardless of what level you're at, there's always going to be someone, maybe a family member or a friend or a coworker, that's willing to support you. I mean, everybody's taste is different anyway. So it's like what you may consider to be not good enough. Someone might be like, that's perfect. I want to put it above my fireplace, in the living room. I don't know.
Exactly. And like you talked about earlier too, there are also a lot of the time grants, whether on a city level or a state level, that help support artists as they're emerging or as they're developing. So you're quasi getting paid through a grant to develop your style. Another thing you have to keep in mind too is that your style and your skill will evolve over time. So then your prices of your pieces will also increase as family, friends, strangers start purchasing your artwork. The value of your work will also increase. And so by starting at that low price point will then help demand later on. And it becomes that strategy of you evolve a little bit better, prices go up, and so on and so forth, which is also tied to another thing that you don't need to start selling your artwork, which is super fancy, over the top marketing, which, of course, coming from someone in the marketing industry, I absolutely love a good, solid marketing brand. Having the logo, having the beautiful website, having that strategy in place. But you do not need that to start selling your artwork. You don't need cohesively branded business cards and stationery and 6 different brochures and post-it notes that have your name on them, as fun as those things may be. But really, to start, keeping it simple. I mean, of course, if you're selling in person, you really don't need any digital presence. You need a way to process payment. And if they want to pay in cash, even better. But starting by keeping your marketing simple, of a very basic website, ideally social media, having images of you and your artwork at whatever quality they may be. Most of us have a smartphone that has a pretty decent camera on it, which does the trick for most things that we need for self-marketing our businesses. Ideally, you could have business cards to spread the word or give them to family to give to their friends, but really making sure that that is not the barrier of entry for starting to sell your work. That stuff will inevitably come as you grow, but you do not need, oh, I need to spend 6 months building out my marketing plan before I can even start thinking about selling. Because I guarantee you, after a month of selling your work, who you thought your target audience will probably change. And then all those branded marketing materials that you made before you started might be needing an update.
I know, this is ringing flashbacks. It's like one of the first events that I did, I bought a banner. I even had it like shipped priority or something from Vistaprint. Like I had the cards, like, oh, I went that way. Exactly. Here's why we share this stuff with you guys. Like this is like, do as we say, not as we do, right? Or as we
Mhm.
did. I spent all this money on all this stuff. And not even 6 months later, my style changed anyway. So it all became completely obsolete.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even
Oh,
this isn't
it's so bad.
marketing, but I remember when I first started releasing a product line, and I was like, well, when I launch this on my website, I'm just going to be flooded with orders overnight. And I bought like 200 manila folders in 2 different sizes. I was like, well, if you keep increasing, it's a better deal. And so now, literally to this day, like, yes, I'm still shipping them. And so it's nice because they're already paid for, but it's a huge box that I have to store. And I'm like, I should have said, okay, after 50 orders, then I can invest in
Mhm,
bulk of it,
mhm.
rather than I don't need 200 manila folders for
No.
pieces when I like the first week, you're like, great, I have 3 orders. And then it
Mhm.
like tanks momentum wise. Like, goodness.
I know, and then it's like it's that idea too of like, spending countless hours building a website, and then you're gonna change it all around anyways. Like
Right.
those first images on my website were the photo quality was fine. It's the paintings themselves that I have an issue with now when I think about it, which is why you'll never find them. Thank you very much. They were all removed.
That's part
They're
of the
so
practice.
bad.
That's part of like just putting the reps in and acknowledging, I think, especially early on, and the more we are in our creative career,
Mhm.
we realize like everything is constantly changing anyway. So it puts less pressure on, like, oh, well, when I'm done this to do list, like all of my
Mhm.
answers will be solved.
Yeah.
Which, whether it's personal life, whether it's art, whether it's your business, you're like, okay, by next Thursday, I'm going to have no problems in the world. I'm going to have
Mhm.
so much free time.
Mm-mm.
That to-do list is
Mm-mm.
done. There's always another to-do list.
Yeah, you're a small business owner. That list never, ever, ever ends as long as that business is up, and that's fine. That's just part of how it works.
Right.
But yeah, it's like Jackie said, no fancy marketing needed. You don't need no, complex marketing strategy, selling funnels. Your branding stuff doesn't have to be consistent yet. Like it's good to think about it as you go, but it's not like everything has to be the same font and the same hex code, Pantone color, whatever. No, it doesn't. Like, especially if you're starting out, you don't need all that stuff. You can sort through that as you go. And especially if you are going to partner with a third party selling partner, a lot of times they will help you with that. And they'll be like, you need to clean that up. You have 7 different fonts. Like, but that's later. So please don't worry about that. Again, you can sell even without that. But next up, I'm going to talk to y'all about the most important things you do need. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artists podcast supporters.
If you have gotten value out of listening to our podcast, please consider becoming a supporter for $4 a month. This podcast is our way of sharing it forward, and we get so much value out of these conversations ourselves, but producing a podcast isn't free.
We have personally invested in podcast equipment and video editing software, as well as dedicate our time to produce, edit, and distribute a new episode every week.
By becoming a podcast supporter, you will help us keep the podcast running smoothly and get access to amazing off-the-record conversations with seasoned artists, authors, art collectors, gallery and museum professionals, as well as industry leaders. These conversations offer even more valuable advice for artists at various stages of their career.
You also get access to our artist community platform and our gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Head on over to levelupartisthub.com to sign up and become a podcast supporter today. Welcome back. So now we're going to talk about the most important things that you do need to start selling your work. And it may be a tad bit surprising, but the absolute number one thing that you need is confidence. Really, that's all it boils down to, is you need to have the confidence that your artwork is good enough to sell. Having to be authentic and not copying someone else's style, not having it be the direct painting that you made in a workshop or a study that you've done based on someone else's work, but really finding your voice and connecting with your audience in the work that you are making.
Absolutely. I second that motion 200%. Yeah. You need to be able to say the number, for example, of how much the painting costs or however much your artwork is. And if you don't have the confidence and you don't seem confident, you're going to plant that seed of doubt into your potential collector going, why would I buy it from you if you're not even confident on what you're selling it for? So there's
Absolutely.
definitely that. So I second that motion. Confidence for sure. You absolutely need it, and it's free, yay, and there's a bunch of TED Talks on the internet that you can watch that will help you, so yay.
Power
Uh,
poses.
I know, there's plenty of talks that will help you with that, and books that will help you with that, so yes. And then the second most important thing that you need, and if you've heard our podcast before, you've heard us rant on this one before, you need a way to stay in contact with your collectors and your audience.
Both
So
past, present, and future point of view.
absolutely. So, first things first, newsletters. There's so many of them that are free. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could literally be 3 photos and 1 paragraph, and that is it.
And
Don't
we're
send
talking
it from
about
your
digital
Gmail.
newsletters.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Yes, we are. It doesn't need to be, this is not a send from your Gmail to all. No, we're talking like using an actual mailing provider, and we have episodes on that. And there's plenty of them that are free. Again, it could be 3 photos, 1 paragraph. I did this weekend. That was the end of it. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. But it's a way for them to remember that you're there, right? And that you have stuff that they could perhaps collect in their homes or businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Another one is website. We're not talking, I know we just said website, as you don't have to have a website. You don't have to have a full blown out website. You could literally have a one pager, a landing page as they call it. And some of the mailing providers let you create a one pager, a landing page, literally just your photo, a mini bio, and your email. That could be all that it is. It doesn't have to be fancy. For some folks, depending what you're selling, it might make more sense that it's an Etsy instead, or even eBay. Like, it does not have to be fancy, but there needs to be some kind of something on the internet that people can find out about you, that you can send them to, that they can then connect to perhaps your newsletter, hopefully. And then last resort, social media. And we say social media as last resort because you do not own your contact information for those folks that sign up that are following you. If social media goes away, like, you don't have their emails and they don't necessarily see what you post. So that's more last resort. Like, if that's all you have right now and bandwidth wise, that's all you feel comfortable with at this time, go for it. But definitely try to add some kind of presence on the internet, like a website, preferably a newsletter of some sort, to then continue to connect with those collectors over time. so that they'll actually see your stuff when you send it out there.
Exactly. And we, of course, have episodes about that on talking about the importance of social media, but also the dangers of social media as someone who works in social media, digital marketing as part of my day job, in addition to my art business. That's a big conversation because, as Adriana said, you don't own that audience. We've had times within the past few months where Instagram is out for a day or threats of different platforms being just completely canceled overnight and all the accounts being deactivated. So it would be such a shame. And that's why we say that on this podcast of it would be such a shame to grow a great, engaged, wonderful audience of all of your future and current collectors on a platform and then overnight losing it all. And that's the nice thing with email and having your own website and that you still have that connection with your audience. But with all that being said, these are all things that we, of course, love sharing on the Level Up Artist podcast with all of you listeners. But this is stuff that we also dive into a lot deeper in with our membership community, talking about those easy steps, no matter what phase of your career you're in, whether you're a hobbyist, whether you're emerging, whether you're an established artist looking to revamp your art business and really start from the ground up, building that foundation. That's what we talk about in the community, providing templates, having community discussions and ongoing trainings so that no matter where you are, there are next steps that you can do that are right for you and your business. Not trying to expect mastery level business skills if you have sold one painting ever, but also having the systems in place when you get there.
Absolutely. So that's a wrap on today's conversation. We hope that if you were on the fence or having questions about whether or not you're quote unquote good enough or qualified or your art is good enough to sell, the answer is there's a lot of things in there that you don't need. And then there's, of course, some we wrapped up with that will help you out. So with that, we are wrapping up and hope you enjoyed this episode.
As always, our blog will be linked in today's show notes, where you'll find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on the podcast, you can reach us through social media. I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artists on Instagram.
You can also visit levelupartisthub.com to join our business community and get full details of all the different things that we discussed today.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.